Okay, let's dive right into this explainer because we are about to completely reframe how we view ancient humans. We often picture our early ancestors as these primitive survivors just sort of barely scraping by in caves. But today, we're looking at evidence that tells a vastly different story. We're going to put ourselves in their ultimate survival test to see exactly how they pulled off some of the greatest engineering feats in history, using literally nothing but the raw materials of the natural world. So, could you build a house today before winter arrives? Really think about that for a second. Imagine waking up tomorrow to find that every single hardware store has vanished. No lumber, no concrete, no steel, and definitely no power tools. And a freezing winter is just a few weeks away. Your family's survival depends entirely on you building a shelter before the freeze hits. Could you do it? Well, for ancient humans, this wasn't some fun thought experiment. This was just everyday life. The fundamental difference between us and our ancestors is really just how we view our surroundings. When we look at a forest, a river, or a mountain, we see scenery, right? A nice place for a hike. But when ancient builders looked at that exact same landscape, they didn't see a wilderness. They saw a fully stocked supply yard. A straight tree was a support beam, vines were rope, and clay was walling. They knew exactly where to find their materials and exactly how to extract them. Let's head down aisle 1. Mastering wood and stone. Because before you can build a roof, you need a frame, and that means mastering your foundational materials. It's absolutely fascinating how early humans acted as basically ancient material scientists. They didn't just grab random sticks from the ground. They actively sought out specific hardwoods for heavy support posts and flexible branches for roofs. But step 2 is where the real genius kicks in. They chemically altered the wood using fire. By lightly charring the ends of the posts before sticking them into the earth, that burned surface naturally resisted insects, moisture, and rot. It's a hack so effective that modern builders actually still use it today. And moving from wood to rock, we find another incredible engineering feat: dry stone construction. This wasn't just about finding a cave to hide out in, this was about actively shaping the environment. Stacking stones to create rigid, durable walls without a single drop of mortar or cement is incredibly difficult. Yet some of these walls, built thousands of years ago, are literally still standing perfectly intact today. The crucial thing to understand here is that the margin for error was absolutely zero. Without cement to patch up gaps or fix a bad placement, early builders had to rely entirely on an innate understanding of perfect geometry, physical balance, and gravity. Think of it like a giant puzzle. Every single rock had to be placed with intense intentionality, especially at the corners, because one bad move and the entire structure would just come crashing down. But what happens when nature's hardware store is out of wood? That brings us to aisle 2, bones and hides. During the extreme environments of the Ice Age, ancient builders had to pivot rapidly to some highly unconventional materials. Okay, prepare to have your mind blown. Ancient hunters actually built homes out of mammoth bones. And no, they didn't just pile them randomly in a heap. They mapped specific mammoth anatomy to precise structural purposes to shelter their families. Massive leg bones became the walls, heavy jawbones anchored the foundation, and the natural arch of curved tusks made for perfect roof supports. It is an absolute masterclass in adapting to your environment. And to cover those frames, whether they were made of bone or wooden poles, they turned to animal hides. These weren't just flimsy primitive tents. The thick leather, stretched incredibly tight, blocked out harsh weather, while the trapped air inside acted as high-quality insulation. Even better, these homes were lightweight and totally portable. That was an absolutely essential survival tactic for nomadic families tracking migrating herds across those vast Ice Age landscapes. Let's shift over to the unsung heroes of ancient construction in aisle 3, fibers and clay. Because even with your wood, stone, and hides, you still need natural glues and ties to hold the whole shebang together. Rope is easily one of humanity's greatest inventions, but we rarely ever talk about it. Plant fiber rope twisted from grass, bark, and reeds was used for absolutely everything. Weaving wall mats, layering reed roofs, and tying entire massive building frames together. The tragedy here is that because plant fibers rot quickly, this incredible technology has almost completely vanished from the archaeological record. But make no mistake, without it, a lot of ancient structures simply wouldn't exist. Then you pair that rope with clay, humanity's original building paste. On its own, clay is great, but when they mixed it with natural fibers like straw or grass, it created a composite material known as wattle and daub. This simple mixture absolutely changed everything about how our ancestors stayed warm and dry.
What we're looking at here is a perfect early example of thermal mass, way before the term was even invented. The thick clay walls would absorb the heat from an indoor fire all day long. Then, as the fire died down and that freezing night set in, the walls would slowly radiate the trapped heat right back into the room. Plus, those grass fibers mixed in acted exactly like rebar in modern concrete, stopping cracks from spreading as the clay dried out. So we've got all our materials, but how did they fasten a heavy, complex structure together without a single screw, nail, or metal bracket? Let's step into Aisle 4, Engineering Without Nails.
The sheer physics behind ancient knots is incredible. We aren't talking about simple loops haphazardly tied together. These were highly complex ties specifically designed to spread force and tension throughout a structure. Because their knots relied heavily on friction, in some cases, the heavier a snow-covered roof got, the tighter and stronger the joint actually became. The structure actively used the weight of its own environment to secure itself. And when rope just wasn't going to cut it, they shaped the wood itself. Long before metal hardware was even a concept, they were carving intricate mortise and tenon joints. It's basically a technique where one piece of wood is carved to lock perfectly inside a slot in another piece. It's like a giant seamless puzzle, and it's a brilliant engineering solution that is still highly prized in fine woodworking today.
All right, let's bring this all together in our final segment, the first master engineers. When you combine all these elements, the synergy of ancient construction is just breathtaking. The smartest builders didn't rely on just one trick. They engineered the perfect hybrid home. They combined stone for rock-solid foundations, wood for sturdy frames, clay for thermal insulation, grass for water-shedding roofs, hides for weatherproof doors, and plant fibers to bind it all tightly together. They synthesized all these different materials to solve deeply complex environmental problems. It is well past time we drop this whole stereotype of the primitive caveman. These people were master craftsmen. They were material scientists operating without laboratories, testing, refining, and perfecting their techniques through sheer observation and trial and error over thousands of years. They possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of their surroundings that honestly, most of us today couldn't even fathom. To them, absolutely nothing in nature was wasted. Every single tree, stone, grass blade, and hide had a highly specific structural purpose. So what does this all mean? I think it means we need to completely redefine what we consider technology to be. We're so used to thinking of tech as silicon chips, power tools, and massive factories. But that's a very modern, very limited view. True technology was this, the intergenerational knowledge passed down over hundreds of thousands of years. It was an operating system stored entirely in the human mind, allowing people to extract maximum utility from a raw wilderness without a single factory or power grid in sight. I want to leave you with this final thought. Without their pure, ingenious ability to step into nature's hardware store and build shelters that kept families warm, safe, and alive through ice ages and extreme weather, the human race wouldn't be here today. Civilization itself would have frozen in its tracks. So when you look around at our modern world with all its advanced skyscrapers and bridges, isn't the ability to build a safe home from nothing but sticks, stones, and mud the greatest engineering achievement of all? Keep that in mind the next time you take a walk through a forest.